the Township was successful at divisional court, where the judges determined that it was a stretch to contend that the fill activity necessary to make a former aggregate pit flat for a runway was not activity that was integral to an aviation operation. The court did not accept that the earthwork site was an airport, and that the court did not feel that the enforcement of site alteration bylaw, like 5210 in the Township, would interfere with the federal works. The case was decided on the first point. And if you ever have a situation where someone plays the airport card or they hang a windsock in relation to a fill operation, just separate the aviation component from the fill activity and deal with the fill.
So in terms of some possible solutions, aside from requesting that the province address the relevant gaps in their regulations and guidelines, which many authorities have already done, a comprehensive site alteration bylaw or fill policy for CAs is necessary.
And just to highlight why this is becoming more of an issue is because under the Municipal Act, there's a provision that indicates that municipal site alteration bylaws have no effect in CA-regulated areas. So you've heard from the township at Scugog, and there are many townships throughout the GTA and beyond that have updated their site alteration bylaws to address a lot of these public concerns. Well, because they are no longer have effect in the CA areas, there's a bit of a gap there in terms of municipalities losing one tool that they can use to address these issues. Some of the other potential solutions that I don't know have been quite explored yet that may be considered would be amending the Municipal Act so that site alteration bylaws and CA regs apply throughout the watershed. And finally, another consideration, I know there's been some discussions at various workshops, is to deal with large-scale fail sites as a change of land use such that they would be considered in the Planning Act, and then you actually establish a formal public consultation process.
With regards to the lack of public consultation, for some of the more contentious large fill sites we have seen, such as the one located adjacent to the seniors community in New Tecumseth, the sudden line of trucks that can number in the hundreds per day often catches neighbors and nearby communities by surprise. There is usually no public warning prior to the commencement of operations. With regards to the MOE's draft guidelines, LCCW, along with other stakeholders, notes a significant omission from the BMP, and that is the absence of specific standards that would indicate acceptable soil quality for excess soils. Ministry tables, such as the one shown here, were developed for use in Brownfield Regulation. However, these tables are being used by industry and planning authorities outside of their prescribed use. The ministry has provided no other relevant standards.
With respect to fill, the main failure that I would have to sum up is that the main failure of the Moreen plan with respect to fill is that the policy does not define site alteration as a land use. And this is something that we need to see addressed.
What came as a considerable shock to LCCW in our research of the Brownfield Regulation, namely Ontario Regulation 15304, and was confirmed to us by MOE staff was the following. Under the regulation, the MOE does not require testing of the excavated material that has gone off of the brownfield property. The ministry does not regulate or require a record of the quality of any soil removed or where any soil excavated goes, nor does OREG 153 require that it be tested. It is usually up to the qualified person of the particular project to address if the material is a waste or if the material can be reused on another site. For LCCW, what is most concerning about the regulation is the critical omission regarding the lack of testing of excavated brownfield soils.
Right now in the City of Toronto, it is not required. We do not test our fill when people are digging foundations or subway tunnels or putting in sewer pipes. We have to change that.
What's the proper testing regime? We've talked a lot about this today. How many tests do you run and what do you test for? I would tell you that I think there's not enough money in the system. A triaxle load of material coming into a fill operation today might net you $70. You still got to pay the truck driver. A single suite of tests for table one, $600. So what we're creating is a system that doesn't have financial basis. That load should be worth $700 so that everybody can be honest and test their products appropriately.
Environmental insurance. Make sure the consultant has insurance. What does Homes a Home say? If he can't show you the insurance or the license, don't hire the guy. And you got to understand what insurance is. Most of them will give you a claims mail policy. It's not worth the paper it's written on. If you're a municipality, you want an occurrence policy. That means that anything that happens, you're covered for over 200 to 300 years. and make sure that that insurance company will indemnify the city like how we did with $30 million worth of coverage. So if I make a mistake, they're covered. They don't have to use their own funds for their lawyers. They don't have to take Toronto soil, bring it into Scugog, if it ends up a mess, being hit on the taxpayers to be cleaned up.
That we have to talk about how we manage the finances of this. Who should be involved in importing fill? Right now, it's the disposer and the receiver of the soil. How can and how should municipalities explore a revenue stream for this activity? Our perspective is that how the finances of moving and storing this fill will define, to a large extent, how it's managed. Managing the full life cycle of building cities includes these costs. We can't forget about them. And we think that there's a requirement to have proper management that needs to include enough money in the system so that it attracts and retains reputable, community-conscious companies and municipalities that want to work collaboratively with them. The municipalities have a large role to play in creating comprehensive, clear, and strategic policies. All of us involved in this process are, again, looking for that clarity.
Now, realizing that there's no provincial oversight, an Earthroots donor recently sponsored a study to analyze as many fill bylaws as we were able to obtain. So what we did was hired a researcher, and we started to gather data. And of course, we worked with Carmela and Ian from Lakeridge Citizens for Clean Water. We started to gather data to get a sense of what was happening within close proximity to the GTA. I'm not sure, this is not the best visual, and if you guys have more questions about this, Debbie and I or Carmela would be happy to talk to you guys more about this. This is a hard thing to sum up quickly. But we looked at 68 municipal bylaws and conservation authority regulations in Southern Ontario, centered around Toronto. The numbers on the graph reflect the bylaws in that category.
So the City of Toronto has already passed a motion saying that we want a consistent, regulated at the provincial level, because I think that's absolutely essential, regime. We want the province to be involved. We don't want 100 different municipalities to have 100 different regulations, some strong, some weak, some just non-existent. We need that provincial protection. And
lastly, the success of all these solutions to this issue will not be found in creating individual systems in many jurisdictions spread over one regional ecosystem. The solutions must embrace the municipal boundaries, but they also need to recognize that to manage the excess fill properly, it's got to be managed as an ecosystem. Only then are we going to be able to be successful for the communities that have stepped up to solve the problems and accept the fill. In essence, many parts of this activity lend themselves to locally suitable solutions, and many of these will cross municipal boundaries. Municipalities working collaboratively with their municipal neighbors will find a much better solution if they manage the landscape, not the boundaries.
We suggest considering putting conditions on development permits at the municipal level, such that required testing of excess soils is mandatory, and proper approvals and consent from local authorities where the fill is to be shipped is received prior to any building permit issued. This could decrease illegal dumping from brownfield development projects. It also has the potential to better address the quality of excavated soils from brownfields.
We want Toronto and other municipalities to pass the bylaws for our procurement policies that say when you build the new subway along Eglinton Avenue, which again is probably about 1 million cubic meters of fill, don't just take it away. This is how you're going to do it, and there's a process and there's a best practice and there's a lot of really good things that we can do, but it's required. Right now in the City of Toronto, it is not required.
What is a life cycle basis? That means that from cradle to grave, the responsibility is the creator's responsibility. That means that what is the creator? Well, we already covered that. Whoever digs the hole, right? Those who cause the holes to be dug should bear the whole responsibility and full cost of the managing the soil until it's satisfactorily placed in its final use. That's the central concept that's missing from this system. The fix is to change the Municipal Act, the Required Materials Management Plan, as part of the development. There may be some changes to the Planning Act that are required as well, especially relating to soil storage facilities. So that's the fix.
In my opinion, from a political perspective, we can control and regulate fill from the site or from excavation to its final destination or its deposition. That's what we have to do.